All right, so PS11 is history, and PS12 is out, and it's due Monday. That's, of course, the last assignment. The final exam is 1 week from today. One thing to note carefully is the final exam is from 1 to 3, so don't show up at 2. I forgot to look again, but anyway, those of you near the beginning of the alphabet, whoever went to the other room for the midterm, go there, 102 at the end of the hall. And everyone else come here. You can bring 2 sheets of notes, front and back. Same rules as the midterm. The exam will be comprehensive, meaning it will cover the entire semester. We'll do a review in class on Tuesday, which will entail, I'll remind you everything you've learned about this semester, but also we will go over a sample final exam. And we're trying to set up a session with the TAs on Wednesday afternoon sometime they'll do a review. We'll let you know more about that eventually. Yes?
Since it's in the afternoon and probably not the normal times, will it be here?
Oh yeah, it's either in here for the last part of the alphabet or 102 for the, oh you mean the review?
Yeah, the review.
I don't know where it'll be. Depends what room's available. Okay, so any questions about that or about anything else like PS12? Okay, so if you're not at the point you can ask questions. I understand that. Let me just point out some things. Number one, you got your choice. You can start with PS10 or PS11. I gave my directions in the assignment about starting with at PS11. But basically, you take either one of those solutions, whichever is your best, and you're basically implementing the stuff that you're depending on the web server to do. So implementing a stripped down web server to serve your service. Okay? So to do that, you've got to use sockets. And you don't have to use raw sockets because I've given, I've given you string sockets. So one thing is, there's this set of slides here on string sockets that we talked about. So when you get into the thick of things, be sure to look at these string socket slides and you can learn about string socket listener, which you'll have to use, string socket client, which you won't, and then some examples of how string sockets work. So that sort of the heart of your server will be a string socket listener that's accepting connections and obtaining sockets that you will then listen to, work with. And then the other thing is to be sure to, these slides, basic HTTP, talks about what you need to know about HTTP, but it sort of ends with sort of a step-by-step what your server has to do, sort of end-to-end. So be sure to review these slides too if you have questions. I think the most important piece of advice I could give you is when you start, pick PS10 or PS11 as your starting point. Then basically you'll create a PS12 project. It'll just be a console project. And you'll have to copy stuff over from PS11 or PS10 into the console project. And first step is to get that all copied over and compiling, and there's some directions in PS12 about how to do that. And then you shouldn't have to modify your service. You're just building some code that uses it in a different way. Okay? So did that remind anyone of any questions they want to ask? Okay. At the end of class, we're going to start today with a guest speaker, Eric Olson. He's right here. He graduated a few years ago. How long ago was that?
2014.
2014, so he's been out 5 years. And he works at Adobe down in Lehigh. And he's going to talk about just various things, what it's like to work at Adobe, what it was like going from here to the workforce, what it was like when he was here. And he likes to answer questions, so those of you, if you have questions, please ask. And then when he's finished, we'll take a break, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some other stuff, but we'll give Eric most of the time today.
Let's see. How do I get to my slides?
Let's make sure I started this up first.
I'll be lost without notes. It's not true. Yay. Present. I'll show it. Got it. Don't need that. All right. Cool. Hi. Like you said, I'm Eric. Sorry, I'm not super formal. But like Joe said, graduated about 5 years ago. Work at Adobe. You guys probably recognize that. Probably heard of PDFs. Possibly, who knows? Let's see. So I guess to start out, so you guys have an idea of what I do at Adobe, since everybody's heard of PDFs, for example. Has anyone heard of the term Adobe Creative Cloud? Yeah? And so under the Creative Cloud, it's all the fun things like Photoshop and Illustrator and things. You've heard of Photoshop too, I'm sure. And how many of you have heard of Adobe Experience Cloud? That's what I thought. So it's usually the response. Anyone heard of anything called Adobe Media Optimizer, or Adobe Campaign, or Adobe Experience Manager? Adobe Campaign? No way. It's awesome.
It's like a marketing thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so one out of however many. So if you get any notion of or any idea that I work on something that you've heard of, it's probably not true. So the office down in Lehigh, we work on mostly things under Adobe's Experience Cloud. And the reason you probably haven't heard of it is the license for most of the products in here start at like $250,000 just for the license, not for like the implementation or anything. So it's out of my price range. I never heard of it till I worked there. So it's okay you haven't heard of that. So I guess what Joe kind of asked me to do was talk about what we do at Adobe, what real work looks like, what I do from day to day, maybe to give you an idea. See if that sounds familiar for what you're learning in school. See if school was worth it. So I'll kind of go through that, but feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, ask questions. I'm going to kind of blow through some of the boring crap and just give you a snapshot of what life is like, and then mostly questions, because you guys, there's things you want to know that I'm probably not going to say on my own. So to start out, the basic tools like that I interact with, I work every day without fail. There's three main parts of life, and I kind of, not that I was cool, so I put a brain, heart, and lungs, like these vital pieces. You guys like that bridge? I thought it was clever. So Adobe uses Git for all of our repositories. Is that what you guys use? Is Git? So I think we used SVN when I was going through the program. Anyone heard of SVN? A few of you, good job. Probably won't run into it the rest of your life. I don't know, maybe. And then anyone heard of JIRA before? A few more. Awesome. So that's where all of our tasks every day, like my life, lives in JIRA, like my to-do list. I'm not a very organized person, and it does a pretty good job. And then my IDE of choice is IntelliJ. At Adobe, people can pick whatever they want. Really, there's a lot of people using Microsoft's code now. It's pretty popular. Some people even use Sublime. It's just not, doesn't have enough tools. IntelliJ is my favorite. Is that what you guys use, or do you get to choose?
Maybe on C#, so they use Visual Studio.
I miss C#. That's such a beautiful language. It's so nice. Oh, I'm jealous. Anyway, so a few more tools, maybe some things you've heard of, maybe you don't. I should have updated this to put Microsoft Azure, which is a competitor to Amazon Web Services, AWS, if you guys have heard of that. Microsoft has Azure Cloud, which is not nearly as robust, and it's been a pain in my life for a little while because nothing works in there. But it's getting better. So I should have put that on here, but my subconscious wouldn't allow it maybe. And Slack is a perfect tool. Like my team, we put memes and GIFs and crap on there all the time. It's probably like 20% real work and 80% just things you could just laugh at all day. Share a lot of YouTube videos. And then of course, whatever else the world offers as far as tools. Adobe isn't very, like they have a certain like base set, like those vital things I showed you, except for the IDE we can choose, but we have to use Git. But as far as other tools, libraries, there's some things we need to care about with licenses of third-party libraries that we pull in, but we really get to just pretty much use whatever's convenient and throw it in there and make things work and make life easy. So if there's a tool you like, there's a pretty good chance you'd be able to use it out there in the industry. Any questions up to this point? Boring? Okay. Not too bad. Yeah.
How do you manage like deployment of various programs? Like, do you have like a server that's like runs Linux or BSD or something that cross compose like Mac OS and Windows or something like that? Or
Oh, you're gonna be an ops guy. That's awesome. That's like up here, and I'm down here. When I hear what these ops guys do for like maintaining the servers and things, I don't have to worry about it. Thank goodness. They give. Do I have anything about deploy in here? Is there a go button? I don't know if I have a go button, so I'll answer that a little bit. So the ops team at Adobe doesn't really trust the common dev to deploy things properly. When I first started there, on our team, we'd manage our own servers to some degree. I was building Docker images, and I was working really closely with the ops team to deploy it. They had their own infrastructure that I didn't know the lower layers, but I worked pretty closely at the Docker layers. But they've abstracted it further since then. So now all we do, we have our Git repository, and we have a master branch, which is the code that we want to be in front of the customer. So we do all of our development on a development branch. When we want a customer to see it, we put it on the master branch, and then we go into a console and we pretty much hit a go button. Like there's a few steps, like sanity checks along the way, but we hit go, and it takes our code and it puts it inside of a Docker image, so it can run in a VM. I might be talking gibberish, I don't know, but things you guys don't really have to worry about in the industry, even though it's fun. And then they deploy it. They have their own like webhooks and things under the hood, and they spin up the servers. So I used to get into some nitty gritty of code and kind of the fun stuff, and I actually liked it, even though it was painful. And now it's mostly I just focus on code. So, but if you love that stuff, then be an ops guy, because you said gibberish to me, so it sounds ops guy. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Do you guys purely use Docker?
Pretty much. I don't know of a team that uses any other container style thing out there. And I don't know of a team that runs things just raw, like on the server and not inside of Docker first.
Can you explain a bit about Docker?
I was just going to ask, do any of you not know what Docker is? It's totally okay, because I had no idea. All right, good, cool. A lot of people. That was totally me, so I get it. So Docker, how to boil this down to a low level, 'cause I'll start saying things like VM and be really excited. So if this guy here wants to run my program on his computer, it might run perfectly fine. And if this guy takes my program and tries to run it on his computer, it might fall apart. He might not have all the dependencies and the proper environment set up to run my application. So Docker is like a snapshot of a virtual machine. It's a what's the word? Predictable environment. So my code would go inside of Docker, which has an operating system already set up. All my dependencies to run my application are baked right into it, and so I know if I run my application inside of this Docker image in a virtual machine, then it's going to run every time. And so what this guy can do, he can run my Docker image on his machine, and it doesn't really matter what his machine is or what his dependencies are. It just doesn't matter what his computer is at all, because my application ultimately is going to run inside of Docker, which runs inside his machine. and then he can put it on his computer too. It doesn't matter what he's running, because my application runs inside of Docker, and it will just dependably run every time. So Adobe and pretty much every big company you go to, I'd pretty much bet money like 95% of you, the code you write will be run inside of Docker at some point. It's just it's an easy way to deploy code in a way that's going to run every time, and it's very testable. Is that clear enough? Any questions on that? Sweet. All right. Any other questions up to this point? You want to continue the slides? It has lightning bolts, so that's cool. Let's see. All right. Development process. So two main things that we get to do, or that I get to do. I get to do less prototyping lately, so it's really sad because prototyping is, well, it's my favorite. I didn't even read that; it just was there. So when we get to prototype stuff, my team in particular, we're called core services. So I don't work on or support any single product. We kind of work behind the scenes and try to play puppet master in between different products. And so we get to build some more custom stuff. And every time there's a new problem that needs to be solved, we get to step back and start all over at the very beginning, which I love. And we get to look at possible technology stacks. So does Node.js fit this use case well as a programming language? Is Java? C# I think is going to be more of an option, which I'll be excited about since it's more open now. And then databases, we pretty much just get to pick. Nobody really tells us what to do, and that's why prototyping is fun. And sometimes we get to build a couple different versions of it on different technology stacks and race it if speed is a concern. And that's ultimately my favorite, which is speed. But then when we actually have to build a real product and the fun goes away, we use the agile development process. Have you guys talked about development processes, agile versus waterfall?
A little bit, a long time ago.
All right, so waterfall is kind of what the world used to run in. Do you guys already know this, or do you want me to tell you? So I'll tell you anyway. So waterfall is what the world used to run in before the interwebs got so awesome. So like Microsoft, for example, would want to release a new Windows version. And what they would do, they would have this development process that would be like a year plus before a customer ever touched it or saw it. They would spend all this time, resources, and build something, and then pull back the curtain, and then big reveal, and it sucks. And well, not all the time, just sometimes. And that was what they did. They had to have the idea, and they had to arrive at a full-fledged product, and then release it. Because DVDs and media, you can't just update that and expect people to get a new update disk every 2 days. So that's waterfall's long process. Agile development is very well suited for web apps because we can see what the customer ultimately wants, but we can also look at it and whittle it way down and be like, all right, right now in the next 2 weeks, we can get the customer like this little set of features. We can get them this thing that isn't what they ultimately want, but it's going to delight them anyway. It's going to be more than they have right now, and we can release that. And then 2 weeks later, we can work for the next 2 weeks on another feature and release that. And slowly over time, we can build these features and eventually arrive at a very mature product. And what's cool about that is along the way, the customer can be testing these little things, and they can start to guide the process. They can steer us in different directions along the way. So if we were thinking in our minds, we think customers are going to want this, and we would start building toward that. But in reality, after customers test it, they're like, we really want this feature over here. This would be amazing. We'd pay triple for this. And we're like, yeah, I'd pay triple for that. And bonuses are beautiful. And I don't get to work with the sales part. I wish I did. That'd be fun. But it ultimately gets the customer more what they want and more often. And it's just easier overall. So that's agile, which is the winner. Try and explain a little bit how it works. So I mentioned that like every 2 weeks we can deliver something to the customer. And those in a nutshell in the agile development thing, those are called sprints. So on my team, every 2 weeks, we have a sprint planning meeting where we close our current tasks that we had accomplished, and then we have this whole pool of tasks that we need to do, and we sit down and we pick and pull these different tasks, which will be these little blue guys, and we fill up the sprint with, I feel like I can do like this many tasks. My friend Nate, I tried to bring him today. Do you remember Nate? Mm-hmm. One of my friends from college, I did all my projects with him. He's on my team at Adobe. We were Joe's favorite students and still are. He couldn't make it today. He's a bum. But we try to estimate like how much can we reasonably accomplish in a sprint, and we assign that to ourselves. And there's management that help drive it, but as the engineers, we're given a lot of freedom to say, I think it'll take that long, and nobody's like, oh, you got to do that like twice as fast. If that was the case, I would hate my job, but I actually really love it. So at the end of every sprint, we'll release some code. We'll start a new sprint, release some code, new sprint. So my to-dos and to-dos in general are called stories or tasks. And there's this overarching idea in Agile called epics. So it's kind of a way to categorize what different tasks are. So one part of the product might be that we need to implement feature X, and feature X might have like a 12-month time frame before it can actually get mature, but there's things that need to get done for feature X along the way. And then there might be a feature Y which is unrelated, a separate part of the same application. And so we try to organize like these different larger categories of our application, and we put these tasks into different sections called epics. We didn't make that up. That's what JIRA calls things. And so what we end up doing is when we plan a sprint, we can kind of do whatever we want. We can take a couple circles, a couple triangles, a square. So we can be working on different parts of the entire project at the same time. All these come from different epics. Who cares what that really means? Just think of it like a tag. It's a way to stay organized. And then we release stuff. What I really like about my job, so I did my internship at an agency where we built like websites for several different clients, like the LDS Church and Target and Stanford University, and so we had these big clients that were kind of driving all this pressure. And Adobe, I really have fallen in love with because we build our own stuff, and there's not this huge contract weighing and like making everybody's life difficult. The agency wasn't terrible. It was actually a really fun job, but what I enjoy about Adobe is along the way, say for this sprint, I'm getting my stuff done, I'm rocking it like usual, and there's some other tasks that we didn't plan on actually doing, but I've really been itching to do them, and I want to do that because to me that task sounds like fun. I can just up and like pull that into the sprint. If I feel like I want to steal it away from my friends and do it first, or just get some extra stuff done, or here is this showing there might be a sprint where I was working on something that was a can of worms and took a long time, and I didn't get to another task that I had assigned to me, and oh no, I didn't get it done, I'm gonna get fired, right? But no, everybody's like, oh yeah, we'll just put it in the next sprint. And some things are a little bit more urgent than others, but ultimately my experience is very casual, low pressure. Everybody knows when you're working hard. People know when you're a slacker. So if you're working hard, nobody's going to judge you for not getting a task done, because everybody knows that crap hits the fan sometimes, and things don't get done, and it just goes in the next sprint, and you get to do it then, and it's not a big deal, which is nice. Low pressure. Any questions on that fun? Sound nice? Yeah?
Was that somewhat of a surprise coming from academia, where that is absolutely not the case?
Joe doesn't care if you don't do something. It was nice. In fact, I was pretty well terrified of taking the job at Adobe, because I thought it was going to be, big company, lots of pressure. And I was actually scared to work for Adobe because I value my side projects and my work-life balance. So I was torn between two jobs. One job was the entire development process was on Rails, not Ruby on Rails, but just not free thought really. Everything was very strict and very straightforward, almost like a drag and drop like development thing. It was almost like scary, easy looking. And I thought, oh man, maybe I should do this, because then my mind would be like free when I get home to do my side projects and everything I want to do. And then when I was considering Adobe, I was like, oh man, I bet I'm just gonna show up home tired and exhausted. I'm not gonna want to do my side stuff at all. And I was really torn because of that assumption. And I love school, and I think I did more work than was necessary just because I really got into the projects. But it was really exhausting too. So yes, I was pleasantly surprised. I went with Adobe, and it was nothing like what I thought it would be. It was like easy breezy. Everybody was pleasy, and it was just I go home energized every day. It's fantastic. So you have that to look forward to compared to school, hopefully. Yeah.
What time in school did you start that internship?
I started at the summer before my senior year. So whatever, you guys are in 3,500. Does that mean you have 2 more years? Yeah. All right. So maybe the next summer. But if you can land an internship early, do 2 summers of internships. So the programming internships generally pay about $20 an hour, from what I've seen. So if you want a decent paying job where they don't expect much, because they expect that you're figuring things out, then it's pretty awesome. It's not a bad deal. And the more experience you can get, obviously, the better. That'll land you a good job. Yeah.
Is Adobe giving internships?
They do. I don't know. I know how to refer people to jobs, but I don't know how to refer people to internships at Adobe. I know there's a recruiter specifically for that. I have my contact info at the end. If you guys care, I'm happy to help, like drive you to the right people when it comes to that. Actually, I'll say one more thing on that note. In the times I've talked to Joe's class, there's been one student that actually took me up on the offer to reach out and talk to me afterward, and he did. It was in 3,500, and so he had a couple years to go, but he started keeping in contact with me and wanted to see if he could get a job at Adobe. And I tried several different teams. I had openings and went through a couple different recruiters, but I eventually helped the dude land a job there, and he was dedicated, and only one out of all of you guys actually did that, which blew my mind. So take me up on it if you want in the future. I get a bonus for bringing people. He was actually really qualified, so I was happy to do it. If you're iffy, I might not want to recommend you, but so just be awesome. I mean, now you don't have to be awesome. You don't have to know what Docker is and most of those things I put on the slide, because honestly, I didn't know. You just have to be reasonably passionate, ultimately. I'll talk more about that in a little bit too. Any other questions leading up to that? More slides. Just more intimate relationships between Git and JIRA. They're in love. So I don't even know if this is this interesting. I should just torch these slides. But JIRA, so all of our tasks have like a certain like task code, like ABC-123. It's a unique ID for that task. And of course, to accomplish that task, we have to do our work in Git. And this is just one of the standards that Adobe tries to get the teams to do. They don't really have to, but most teams follow this pattern. So I'll explain. So when I show up in the morning, if I don't have anything I'm already working on, I'll go into JIRA and I'll pick one of my tasks. Say I pick ABC-123 to work on for the day. And it has a description that I need to set the default limit for API collect. The default limit for API collections should be 100. I'm like, okay, I know how to do that. I've been doing this for a little while now. I know what that means. And so I go into my IDE, make the code change. Super simple, rock star, right? And then this is just one of the little nuances of what we try to do is when we're committing our code to Git, we usually preface it with the with the task ID that we worked on. Actually, there's some teams that actually set up their Git repositories so that it will reject any commits that aren't prefixed with a certain pattern that matches a JIRA ID, because they're so expecting that every commit is trackable to a task, so that if something does start to unravel, it's easy to find in the commit logs what was related to that task, and it makes stomping bugs and putting out fires just that much easier. So after I've done that, I committed my code, I go and I hit the resolve button in JIRA, which means my part is done. Sometimes there's a QE team, sometimes I'm the QE team. Validate our own stuff. 1 + 1 = 2. Hopefully what you did was right, or else you wouldn't have committed it. But sanity check. It deploys to the development server and just make sure, yeah, in fact, it does work there, not just on my computer. And then, good job, you earned a paycheck, and that's what we all really want. So if you want a big dollar sign, then do a good job. If you want a littler one, then do an okay job. But that's fun. Money is fun sometimes. Code stuff. I don't know. I kind of talked about a lot of these things. Coding standards. I implied some of these things. Coding standards. It's kind of up to the team in some ways. Adobe doesn't have like a real strict coding standard except for certain things around security. So if you're building an application and there's going to be API calls or personally identifiable information for users, there's certain security audits that take place, and they might say, oh, you guys should do this or shouldn't do that, sort of thing. Otherwise, as far as tabs versus spaces, it's kind of up to the teams. There's no one really enforcing. Some people intermix them, and it drives my OCD side nuts, because just everyone should agree on one in the same code base at least. Consistency. Code reviews, again, team level. My team is very, very big into code reviews, and it's actually part of the time where we goof around the most, because if I committed something and one of my teammates is looking over the code, they almost always ask me to come over there, mostly so we can chat and goof around for a little bit, and then I can give some clarification. But it's a good time for us to sit and go through the logic, and it's awesome to get more eyes on one thing, because often I didn't do certain parts of things the best way, and I'm always learning, so it's really helpful. Testing, unit tests, oh man, life would suck ultimately in the world without tests, and you guys probably hate testing if you even do it right now. You'll probably hate writing tests in the industry, but it will save your bacon to have tests, and it makes you develop a lot faster. I love and hate tests a lot. Are you guys doing UML? I know that was one of the things you were doing.
Yeah, very briefly.
Okay. So I had it on the slide. It's a thing. I don't use it. The other job I was telling you guys about that I almost considered, that I thought would be easy breezy, was a company called Workday. You heard of them? They have a building downtown. Their like entire development process is like strictly built at UML style, and their like home baked programming language is like integrated with the UML idea in general. So they don't build anything until they UML it first. So one extreme, and then I don't use it at all. Collaboration. So here's the thing. So one of the things I was scared about working in the industry was everybody's going to know more than me. Everyone's going to think I'm a dummy. If I ask for help, I'm just going to reveal how dumb I really am compared to everybody. There's probably some of you that are afraid to raise your hand and ask questions because it seems like everybody else gets it, and I promise you that's not even close to true. But if you feel like you're not getting it and you're afraid to raise your hand, I understand that because I felt that way. And I was scared of that in industry in some ways too, because suddenly I have this big paycheck that I need to feel justified in earning, and that's a lot of pressure. And everybody else around me is a genius, and I snuck in. But what's really cool is that I found this industry to be very collaborative. Like it's such a team sport. Everybody seems to play nice. I mean, if you drag your feet and you're lazy, people aren't going to be happy with that. But if you're working hard and you're trying and you have to ask a lot of questions along the way, it's totally cool. It's completely acceptable. And nobody's going to expect you to show up on the job and know exactly what to do, especially out of college. And even if we just hired a guy on my team with 10 years experience, and we were talking before we hired him, we're like, okay, he's going to have maybe 6 months of ramp up time. And we told him when we hired him, we're like, dude, just sit with us all day if you need to and just ask questions. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, because if you sit there quietly, afraid to ask questions, then nothing will get done. Might as well ask questions, and then we can become your friend quicker because we're talking, and it's just better that way. So don't be afraid of industry. Even if you're sitting there scared, you'll figure it out. Any questions on this intense slide of text? How am I doing on time anyway?
Great.
Okay, tell me if you want me to roll along quicker. Yeah.
What are your two questions? What's the size of your team? And the second question is, when you guys are having JIRA tickets, I'm guessing what are you trying to limit your JIRA ticket size to?
Good questions. Okay, so my team size. So the whole time I've been up at Adobe up until the start of this year, I've been a team of 4 at the most. And just recently, my manager got promoted to director, and there was another team that was working on a product that got merged into something else. So there was a team of 14 that didn't really have anything to do, and our team of 4 had been working on something that now has a lot of attention, and the requests for features are growing just really huge. So it turned out our team of 4 just became a team of 18. So we can fulfill the requirements for something that started out as a prototype, which is really fun. So we're a team of 18. Our original 4 are still working on this product, and we've taken I think 5 of the new team to help work on it, and then the rest of them are starting to prototype some other things. So we're all kind of doing different things here and there. For JIRA ticket sizes, what's the best way to put it? So when we're sitting in our planning meeting, we're looking at a task that doesn't have an estimate on how complex it is. And if it's a task that I'm going to work on, usually I'll take a quick look at it and be like, okay, that's a 1-point story. And we use a Fibonacci sequence of numbers to point stories. So there'd be a 1-point story, a 2-point, a 3, a 5, an 8. If something's bigger than an 8, we'll break it up into pieces. So a 1-point story is something I can do in a day. 2-point is half a week, and it's kind of guesstimated. 5-point story is an entire sprint. So we try to keep our numbers like somewhere between 5 and 8 seems to be what we can do. Some of the bigger point stories are bigger because we have to talk to other teams and wait for things. So while I'm asking my question and waiting for an answer by email, I can be working on something else. So even though 5 points is an entire sprint, there's a lot of parallel work that can happen. So we kind of so I'll throw out a point idea and be like, yeah, I think I could do that, and that's like a 2-point story. Someone else would be like, oh, did you consider this? I think we might need to talk to this team. And I'd be like, oh, you're right. If we have to talk to someone, it's at least a 3 because it takes forever to get feedback or something. So there's a little bit of collaboration, and then we come up with these points, and then we throw them in the sprint. I really got low level on that. It's probably really boring. Sorry about that. Fibonacci numbers. What the heck? Hello. It's fun. All right. This part you guys are probably more curious about. Getting a job. My recommendations for getting a job. It's pretty much the last real important slide, so we can spend most of our time here. you asking questions. My recommendations for getting a job. For me personally, that would be doing side projects. If the only projects you do are schoolwork, that's going to be great because Joe has some really cool assignments. I want to do this string sockets thing. It sounds fun. I like sockets. So I want to see what you guys are doing. But if you really want to be able to be more impressive, like stand out from other new college grads, then having a portfolio of side projects that you've done and that you're passionate about is far and away my favorite thing to look for in a candidate when we're interviewing people. If I ask someone if they do side projects and they're like, no, I just like to go home and shut down, I'm like, that's fine. Like I'll still consider them. But if someone's like, oh yeah, I'm working on this with some friends and I also have this going, I'm like, yeah, this person they're excited about this stuff, and that energy carries into work, and that's really fun. If you don't love programming enough to do side projects, you can still get a great job and you can make great money. I'm just telling you, if you do want to stand out a little bit more, side projects, and if you want to be able to grow faster in your career, so if you want to like go up the levels of the engineering chain, which have higher salaries and things, if you want to shorten that timeline, having side projects so that you have a pocket of extra knowledge that can get your job done faster, and you can offer ideas to management and architects, that goes really, really far. If you've gone and played with like Google Firebase and done stuff that you don't learn in school, and even though we don't use Firebase at Adobe, just having things you can talk about is really helpful. So I kind of led into be excited about it, side projects again. In the interview as well, also the most important thing, so I've interviewed people that try to prove to me that they know everything. Man, that's so maddening sometimes when someone tries to shove their knowledge down your throat. It really feels like they're trying to say they're better than me, and they probably are. But there's a huge difference between telling someone that you know everything and conveying that you do, and being able to show the enthusiasm, say a few things intelligently, and then move on. That is golden right there. If you can like show that different technologies don't scare you, then that's fine. You don't have to know how to program in Node.js or C# or anything in particular. But if I get the feeling that you can learn it, then there's no problem at all. This industry is filled with different languages, and there's no reason you should have to know them all before you go into the industry. Just the fact that you've learned one or two means that you're going to be able to pick up on the others reasonably well. So if you can convey that without being condescending, then good job. I've had some people I wanted to punch trying to get a job, and it's like, no, that's the wrong way to approach it. So I will say one other thing along that line, because I like and hate this example. So there was this guy that we interviewed for my team, and he was condescending like crazy. He pretty much told me word for word that I'm doing my job wrong and that I should be doing it this way. We were talking collaboratively about a problem, and I asked him a question, not intended to tell him it's the right way, but to probe him, and man, he jumped down my throat for it. And no, we did not hire that guy. But and this is the ray of sunshine for you if you act that way. Is he was really he was a determined person. So he got into some networking groups and people that met at Adobe and got his name out there, and a couple other teams didn't hire him for the same reason, and then there's a team that hired him, and so he still got the job. So even if you suck as a person, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. So there you go, whatever that's worth. Another thing, be honest what you know and don't know when asked. I've interviewed a lot of people who I've asked questions to that didn't know the answer, and they spent way too much time trying to come up with the answer on the fly instead of saying, I don't know. And then I've been like, okay, and then spend the time on something else. Where when they spend the whole time sitting there, suffering and their anxiety goes up, so their brain starts functioning less and less, they're not going to get closer to the answer. It's easier to just move on and show what you do know, and that'll be more impressive. So don't stress out if you're asked something in an interview that you don't know. Confidently be like, I bet I could figure it out, but I don't know right now. Everybody knows how to Google, so you definitely could find the answer, I'm sure. Also do an internship, which we talked about. If you don't have job experience, internship is golden to give you that job experience. It was my internship that got me my job at Adobe. My internship, I worked for a company downtown called Access 41, and I worked on building websites in Adobe Experience Manager. It's like a content server for large corporations, and that's what I built websites in, and I just happened to have that on my resume when I applied for Adobe, and that little golden nugget is what got me in the door, since I didn't know nobody at Adobe to help me. I had a crush on the building more than the company. I really liked that building. It looked cool, and I wanted to work there because I thought, man, that place just looks awesome. So do an internship for sure. Might as well earn $20 an hour and then set yourself up for a job. And then probably more than anything else that I can attribute anything I could remotely call success about landing a job is doing lots and lots of interviews. At first, I started doing interviews with just a couple companies that I thought I would definitely work there. And I showed up and I was really anxious, like crazy, because I didn't want to be interviewed. I don't like talking in front of people. It's scary. But so my first few interviews were just like, I was anxious. I didn't look forward to it. My mouth was like cottony and just, oh man, it was bad. It's like first dates and things, and you haven't dated forever. And then I decided, you know what? Maybe if you attribute it to like dating, just date everybody. Don't feel like you're serious right away. There's no rush in life, right? So I decided even if I'm not gonna marry this company, I'm gonna date them. I'm gonna go for an interview. I'm gonna see what they're like. I'm gonna get the experience of being interviewed, and man, I became addicted to interviews. I loved being interviewed after a while, and my confidence while I was being interviewed went up, and it was fantastic. Even though in the back of my mind, if I knew there's almost no chance I would want this job, they gave me a chance to interview, and I took it. So if you can get that kind of mindset, maybe it pays off, maybe not, but I feel like by the time I was actually ready to take a real job, I feel like my confidence in being interviewed was much higher. I just felt comfortable in my own skin, and I think that makes a big difference, because you can convey the confidence that you are ultimately going to have on the job that you don't have because you're on the spot, and that's kind of unfair to yourself to put yourself in a situation where you're not at your best. And you don't even have to be at your best, just at your regular. So try to get comfortable and interview lots all over. Lots of people want to hire engineers, so you can get lots of interviews that you don't want to be hired at. Yeah.
How do you get those interviews? Like career fairs, LinkedIn, cold calls, begging on the street, all of those.
Yeah, all that. So I got several of my interviews from the job fairs that they do at the U. And then just reaching out, job boards and things. There's lots out there. The few I did from the career fair here could have turned out to be good options. So definitely check those out. But yeah, everybody wants to hire you. I think we could probably spend. How much time do you want me to take from this point for questions, Joe?
No, 10 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just do questions because this is the fun part for you guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're contributing to an open source project, are future employers just looking at your commits on your GitHub? Or?
Some do. I know. So Adobe does do some headhunting, I know, and they do vet people by stalking their GitHub and seeing what they contribute to. one of the guys that I worked with while I was doing my internship, he was a veteran. He wasn't there on his internship, but he was eventually headhunted by Adobe, just exactly for that. He was into a bunch of open source, and they saw that he was really like a heavy hitter out there, and they went after him because of it. He didn't accept the job because I don't know, but it does bring visibility for sure. Yeah.
This is kind of a random question, but I'm curious, like, what percentage of your coworkers are from the University of Utah?
So my team of 4, 3 of us went to the U together. So I got there first. I brought Nate, who's like my best friend that did most of my classes with here. He was on the EAE track, so we didn't get to do our senior project together. He actually got me my internship because he worked at the place. And then when I worked at Adobe, I brought him over. And then another one of my friends that I actually did my senior project with, I brought him over on my team as well. So 3 out of the 4 of us were my friends and myself. Then the other guy was from BYU. We don't want to. He's a really cool guy. We went through a lot of people looking for a good personality fit because like we're really protective of our team dynamic because we like to think we're the coolest team. Probably the fact that we think that we're probably not, but we're protective. But we picked someone that didn't come from the U anyway. Shameful as it is. As far as the new team of the 18 of us, I would say probably half. No, I lied. Half of the Americans probably from here, but there's it's really cool, like diverse team. So there's 2 people from India and a man from Hong Kong on my team too. So they went elsewhere. But several BYU, and then most people are from Utah. So just kind of guessing, but it's about half. Yeah.
Where's a good place to put your side projects on? Is GitHub a good place, or like where do you put your side projects up? So we can see it.
If you want your project, your code base, then yeah, GitHub. When I did my side projects, I always had applications out there, like web apps, websites, and so my side projects, this is way outdated, guys. I'm sorry. This is so I built this like as I was graduating. So a lot of these links don't work because I'm not looking for a job right now. If I was looking for a job, I would definitely update this. But none of these point to code repositories. Like Random Abs is my main baby. And it just is live running things that people can go and put in their hands and test. If your project is like terminal based, then I think a GitHub link is perfectly fine. Blueprint was my senior project. Scream Louder was an app that I built in application development at the U. So was Calki. Estacoin was a debate that I had with my senior project group because a couple of them were into Bitcoin mining, and I was making fun of them. And I was like, I bet I could make more money by building a website that supported Bitcoin miners than if I actually mined Bitcoin. I think I was actually wrong ultimately. I should have bought back then. But I built something to try to show my friends out. So yeah, just this little things. Jixit was my way of playing with cryptography by building a website, and the server that I had running for that is actually down, so you can't see that right now. It wasn't super cool, but I had things, stuff out there, which is fun because when I applied for like places like Google and Facebook and places around, I was watching the analytics for my site, and I could actually see that the companies I was applying at, there was hits on my website for that because I had it on my resume, so people were actually checking me out. So I probably said too much, but there you go. Yeah.
How do you find inspiration for your side projects? Or where do you draw those ideas?
See a need and try to fill it. So before I came to the U, I was trying to figure out how to. I was teaching myself programming. I was actually in real estate, and teaching myself programming. In real estate, I had to work on my own real estate website a little bit because the people that built it for me spelled my last name wrong. So I had to dig into the HTML, which I'd never seen before, and spell my name right, and it was like rainbow themed, and I wanted it more professional themed, and so I figured out some CSS. And around that same time, I had a group of friends, and we would go to the high school track by my house couple nights every week, and we'd go exercise together, and somehow I was the one that always had to figure out what we were going to do for our ab routine. And I realized I had a very small pool of ab exercises, and I didn't feel like I had very good variety, for example, on how to come up with interesting routines every time that weren't like, oh, we're doing that again. So I built random abs, teaching myself programming as a way to randomly generate an ab routine for me, where I didn't have to come up with it on my own. And I actually didn't know how to do many algorithms, so I actually wrote my distribution of some things on bullets, so that it was the only uniform object I had laying around. You don't have bullets laying around? And so I'd pull it out and I'd be like, oh, there's a 4, so my routine would have 4, and I had like an Excel spreadsheet. And so I built the website, but I didn't have like the brains to generate stuff really working, and so this was how I got the random stuff. And but anyway, so I was sick of coming up with ab routines, so I built a side project for that. I wanted to learn some cryptography, so I made a side project for that. Is that not working? Yeah, I mean, just anything really. I like to build things that I find a need for, except recently one of my current side projects is a productivity app, and I'm not organized and I won't use it myself. But I came up with what I think is a good idea, so I'm going to try it, even though it doesn't really apply to me. So whatever you think is cool and interesting, and there's a gap in the market for, then yeah, go for it.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned how you sort of suffered from imposter syndrome when you started working, right? Like everyone is going to know more than you. And
oh yeah, you probably still do.
Did you feel that way in school?
Oh man, yeah. So I usually sat about the middle, and there's always someone in the classes that when a question was asked, they always had an answer. There's always the smart people, and man, they can go really far in life, but at the same time, that really intimidated me because they were giving me the idea that was a snapshot of everybody else around me. And yeah, I mean, I felt like I was at a disadvantage. I was older in school. A lot of people have been programming for a long time, so seeing people be able to answer these questions that I had no idea made me feel like, yeah, people knew more than I did. So it is a little scary, but it's not, like I said before, it's not the actual truth. Most people are going to be on your same level. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Maybe a related question, since it sounds like you've been involved in some of the hiring of your team.
Mm-hmm.
From like the company's perspective, you talked about how like show that you can learn more than what you necessarily know. If you hire a candidate who seems awesome, seems ready and able to learn, but doesn't necessarily understand the tools you guys are using, what does their growth look like from the company's perspective? Like, how much of a grace period do you give them to get up to speed? What does that look like from the company side?
I don't think so the company doesn't really care at that level. The immediate manager cares, and then from my experience, the managers are great at buffering pressure from higher up. I never felt like a manager has pressured or passed pressure down to me and my team. So when we hire someone new, I've never felt like there's all of a sudden an equal share of expectation just because they're on the team. And I've never really felt like there's a deadline for them to get ramped up as well. I think it's pretty easy to gauge after a while, from my point of view, how much grace period there is, and even that's a guess. So if somebody takes a little bit longer than that, I'm not sitting there with the calendar, like I just said, I'm not organized, making sure that they hit it. but it's pretty clear once you see somebody start to pick up little pieces here and there. It just, you can get a pretty quick idea of if the person's getting it and if they're grasping things. And most of the time I realize that they're grasping things faster than I did, so I feel a little bit lucky that I got there sometimes, but but yeah, I don't think there's any real set expectation other than work hard and try. Any other questions?
I see one of your projects is like an Android app.
Yeah.
How would that differ just from like your other web applications? Is that one harder? Was it easier? What were your kind of thoughts on it?
That was harder because I had never touched Android until the class here, and that was my final project for the class. So my depth of knowledge in app development was pretty low, but it was really fun. I liked that a lot. I still want to actually turn that into a real app, and it never got released, but I want to redo it now that I know how to do things more properly. Web is where I learned, so I'm more comfortable there, but the mobile world is where things are going. When I do web apps, or when I do mobile apps now, I use React Native. If you guys care, I'll just throw that out there for a little extra. So you can build in one code base, and it'll play on Android or iOS. Yeah.
Do you use Docker for web?
I have. I had when Random Apps was purely a web app, I eventually turned it into a Dockerized application, and then I deploy that through Amazon Web Services through their container engine. But I've turned it from a web app into a mobile app, so now it's just a website pointing to the downloads for the mobile app, so it's no longer Dockerized. But it would be my choice for releasing my own web apps to Dockerize it. Yeah.
Two questions. The first one is, generally, what languages do you use a lot at Adobe, and which ones are your favorite? And the second one is, like, generally, what do your development machines look like? Like, what kind of operating systems and tools you're generally using?
Sure. I'll answer your last question first. So when somebody gets hired there, they get to choose if they want a Mac or a PC. The Macs are the top of the line ones. The PCs are, I don't know if they're top of the line, but they're more powerful than the Macs because that's just how PCs work. But most people have the Macs. I chose the Mac, just the terminal out of the box and a lot of the tools. But if you're comfortable on a PC, there's a lot of engineers that have PCs and a lot that have Macs. So it doesn't really matter as far as that goes. You get to choose. Similar with phones, we all get company phones, and you can choose an Android or an iPhone. As far as languages, because our applications are Dockerized, and it doesn't ultimately matter, we can pretty much pick based on our project. If a product is already mature in a certain language, it's what you're going to stick with. The most common is going to be Java. When I'm prototyping things, and with a lot of my projects, I tend to prefer Node myself. I find Node to be really fun to work in, easy and fast for prototyping. If you guys don't know, Node is a JavaScript server. I don't know of anyone that uses C# on a team at Adobe. Now that it's open, though, I don't see there would be any restriction to using that. There's some things in Python. There's some things in C. Nothing that I've worked on, though. So, yeah. Yep.
What are some of the common interview questions you've gotten that you think are really important to nail?
Oh man, feels like an interview question coming from you right now, because I don't know the answer to that. I've been asked some really dumb questions. I've been asked some overly complex ones. Man, that's a good question. I don't know that there's any specific question to nail. I've had a lot of whiteboarding questions, which I started asking when I started interviewing people, and then I realized very quickly how pointless that really is. because all you really want to know is if someone is confident and capable and has a good personality fit for the team. And watching someone suffer at a whiteboard is a terrible way to get that information from them. So I don't know. Every interview I've been at is so different, it's hard to nail down. It's hard to say. If a company sits there and asks you dumb whiteboard questions the whole time, I'd be nervous about working for them because I would want to work for someone that cares more about my personality and kind of the bigger picture, what drives me, rather than if I can come up with this trick problem that they already know the answer to right in front of their eyes. It's just not super fair. But don't be surprised if you get those. Sweat through it like a champ, and if you fail, then smile it off. That's all I can say. Just give yourself credit without sounding like you're pumping yourself up, and just tactfully fail somehow. And ask them if they have something harder, even after you fail, and then laugh at it or something. I don't know. Just make it fun. Like, disarm them. That's all I can say. This is fun. I like questions. So as much time as Joe wants to give, I can take. That light is killing my eyes.
Well, why don't we end there? I don't have anything to add, so we're just done with class. Eric, hang out for a few minutes if you've got specific questions for me. If you've got questions for me, I'm here too. So anyway, thank you, Eric.
I keep clicking the wrong side. Leave my email there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Hi.